So without any further ado, I'm going to bring out the next panel, and I'm going to introduce Susan Sullivan, who is the Corporate Records Manager for the National Archives, to moderate the session.
Hi, Lawrence. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank everybody for sticking around for the last session of the afternoon, which is supposed to be the one of the best, because they saved us for last, and it's quick wins, things that you can do to improve your program and reach customers. As Lawrence said, I'm Susan Sullivan, and the CRM after my name stands for Certified Records Manager. It's not my new title, which everybody thinks that it is, which is the Director of NARA's Corporate Records Management Program. So early this morning, if you were here, my new boss, Tom Mills, you may remember him, he described NARA's own records management program as the shoemaker's family. For those of you that understand what that means, it usually means that the shoemaker's family has the worst or no shoes. Well, while that might be true to a point, I want you to know that the shoemaker's family is designing and trying out footwear alternatives. And we are sharing these designs with the shoemaker to make new types of shoes, RM solutions, that you and we can use to make our records management programs better. And that matches up with what we're going to be talking about in this session. So I'd be happy to talk specifically about what NARA is going to be doing and what we are doing, but I hope to have time to do that in a year or two when I'm accepting my Archivist Achievement Award. And I challenge all of you to beat me in that initiative. But seriously, there are 3 trailblazers here who have quick wins to talk about. Their bios are all in your program, so I won't read those to you. First to speak will be Robert Storr from the Office of the Secretary of Defense. He will tell us about how to get control of legacy data. Next, Vita Sims from the Recovery, Accountability, and Transparency Board. Sounds very Obama-esque, doesn't it? She will talk about standing up a new records management program. And last but not least, a new friend I made at lunch, Jason Longcore from the Department of the Army, will talk about using a wiki to, I gotta scroll here, this is the problem with using an iPad, using a wiki to reach warfighters. Sounds very interesting. So I'm gonna turn it over to Robert now and enjoy the program.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, since you stayed, I'm going to tell you a joke. Last night, the Pope and I died. We're in the waiting room, and the announcer says, Mr. Storr, please report to room A. I went, oh my God, they caught me. I'm not supposed to be going to heaven. So I go into room A, and there's this driver of a limo, and we go up to the limo to heaven. We pass the train the Pope is on with 3,000 other people. We get there, and St. Peter says, hey, Bob, would you like something to eat? I went, yeah, sure. Went into a nice restaurant with all sorts of 3 forks and 9 spoons and 8 steak and lobster. As I was finished, I looked across the hallway to the cafeteria, and Pope was standing in line with 3,000 other people. I went, what is going on here? So they took me to my room, and it's like an 8-room with a ESPN room, a video room, a game room, and all that. Pope walks by and says, that's it. He grabs me by the arm and takes me to see St. Peter. And the Pope says, hey, I was the Pope. I led Catholics. I was a man of goodness and stuff. And why are you treating him so good and me like everybody else? St. Peter says, well, I have 19 or 20 popes. I need a records manager. If you didn't laugh, that was going to be my defeat. But it was a quick laugh. Well, this is what we're going to talk about. You all can read. Let's go on to the next one. Who are we and what do we do? Well, I'm in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, not to be confused with the Department of Defense. It's like different shades of green. I do support the Secretary of Defense, DoD agencies, undersecretaries, assistant undersecretaries. So we have a whole range of records. We have classified, we have unclassified, we have financial, we have intelligence, we have operations, we have reports, we have inventory. So how do I do it? Well, I am in the records and I'm the chief of the Records and Classification Division. Well, for the records management part, we establish, implement, and operate the OSD Records Management Program. And 99% of the time, it's like pushing a huge rock uphill. I only have 2 full-time records managers and 1 contractor support. We do scheduling, retirements, transfers. We help departing officials, of which I'm going to help Mr. Gates as he departs. Deeds of gift, vital records, and electronic records guidance. Okay, you see I have very little people. I have a very small budget. So I had to use my intuition and think out of the box. I had to figure out how I could sell this to people across the organization. How do I win allies? So I go to the financial department and they say, oh, our records are screwed up. Well, let me have a team of people come in and see what we can do. And all of a sudden they're supporting me when I need money for an electronic management records application. We take our victories and we advertise it. Once a month we're in the Washington Headquarters Services newsletter. And the most important thing is you got to have a 30-second speech, elevator speech, passing your boss in the hallway of what you need and what you think and how you're going to get there, okay? Now, the most important thing is you have to be flexible, okay? I come up with what my staff says wicked ideas, and they tell me why they can't do it, okay? But we end up doing it anyway because they're flexible and they like a good rating. We have tried all sorts of things to move towards electronic records management. We've moved ahead of most established guidance. And so last year, we asked NAR to come down and inspect us, and one of the things they looked at was our electronic records management program. The results are online. Okay, I'm very pleased with the results. It has given me emphasis to help correct an organization who at one time thought they did not create any records. So the first thing is you have to think as wide as you can. You have to think of not just who you support in your activity, but as an agency, okay? The very first thing that we had to do is realize that even though there were 17 components, there were only 2 assigned records managers. That was part of the ground truth. The other part is, okay, they say we have 86.5 million pages at the Washington National Record Center. Has anybody gone out and checked? We found 236 boxes that we had been paying storage fees on for about 15 years that were basically missing or transferred to the National Archive. Net savings was like $5,000. But to the numbers people, $5,000 is $5,000. You have to identify the unknowns. And with electronic records management, one of the unknowns at the time was what is going to be the acceptable electronic formats in the National Archives, okay? So we work with those people closely, okay? I cannot tell you how important it is to have 2 intelligent people who work with you and can deal with the National Archives staff in, lack of a better word, argumentative, but they're willing to listen to what you have to say. You just have to give them a chance. I really appreciate that. Now, it's my job to sell it to management, like, okay, it costs me $500,000 a year to store records. Most of the records are going to be there for 30 years. You give me $500,000 and I can go out and buy servers and store that 60 million pages on the electronically, and overall it's only going to cost you $120,000 a year. You in for that? Yeah, I'm in for that, okay? One of the things that's important is that we had to go to staff elements at the senior executive level and tell them, you don't have a records manager, okay? By our accounts, you haven't submitted records to WNRC since 1998. These are the things that you have to be able to say to these people. But the overwhelming thing that has been an successful part of our program is that we have a viable training program. From 2001 to 2004, my office trained 45 people. Last month, we trained 96. We average training between 400 and 500 people a year because, yes, IT people, the images are a record. It doesn't make any difference what they're doing. No, you can't use that in your system. Doesn't meet records management qualifications. So we've ended up closing down 2 major projects because they did not include us in the beginning. They do now. Now, you have to be realistic. I came from the intelligence community and the United States Army, who was, well, you got to get it done yesterday, okay? My personal philosophy is, are they shooting at us? No, then it can wait till tomorrow. We need to make sure you're planned out, really. Okay, you can't fix it overnight. But if the senator from Arizona wants to see emails from having to do with a purchase of an aircraft and you don't have them, that has to be done right away. Okay, that's how I got our email program in place. Okay? Now, this is my original vision, okay? I sat down on a whiteboard with my program manager, Luz Ortiz, and 2 other people, and I said, this is where I want to be all the way on the right. Well, it's your left, correct? On the left, okay? How do we get there? All right? We have 60 million pages at WNRC, okay? Why do we have them? Because 80% of them are listed as permanent. That means I'll be paying $400,000, $500,000 a year for 30 years on records. Do you know why they're permanent? In 1971, the Director of Administration and Management said, I'm not buying any more file cabinets. So everybody packed up the records and sent it to the Washington National Record Center and listed it as permanent. Okay. So we did a beta test. We looked at 20 million pages of permanent information that was between 18 and 20 years old. And for us to convert that to an electronic image, okay, I figured that I'd have to have anywhere that 25% of the material I could get rid of, okay? Based upon the NAR standards and our up-to-date record schedule, we could get rid of 76%. Okay? So after we decided that we could get rid of 76%, which ones did we scan next or first? The area that did not respond to the FOIA. Well, if you give me the money, you won't have $9 million in litigation. I won't save you money, but we can avoid the cost. Ah, okay. That's a good idea. So here's where we are now. I have what I call the electronic archive. It is in a XML format. I have the Rumsfeld Records in there and his immediate subordinates. I have been able to locate and put in the 9/11 task force, the Fort Hood shooting, special studies like Don't Ask, Don't Tell, deputy and under deputy, and I put it all there saying, yeah, okay, we're electronic management, right? Well, what good is it if it's not being able to retrieve? So we design the facets that we look this stuff up on the questions you get asked from FOIA: who, what, when, where, why. We've been using this executive archive to help the FOIA for a year and a half, and we're at the 96% rate hits finding documents. How did I get them to go along with this? Well, you have 5 cases in the 25 oldest cases across the department, across the executive branch. Why don't you give me those requests and let me see if I can find the records? Found them all. In 2010, the FOIA office was the first time in 20 years they didn't have a FOIA case in the top 25. The lawyers come to you and say, we have a don't ask, don't tell litigation, and we have 86 things that we need to find. They gave it to the component that would have that information. They found 11 pages. We found 115,500 pages, CDs, tapes, because we were able to locate it through the system. What it does is you stop looking for the document and you look for the information. If you want detainees in March of 2002 from the Secretary of Defense, we can find that information. We can search across any facet, any word that's in the collection. We did this demonstration to the historians, and I asked if anybody wanted to use an example, and the JCS historian came in and said, I'm looking for this document. 2 seconds later, number 1 document popped up, and he starts laughing. I said, isn't that what you wanted? He says, yes. I spent 6 months looking for that document. Now, what this does is, because it is so fast and so responsive, makes me look like a hero to my bosses. Because we can now have this information, and with reasonableness, we can say, no, we don't have that, okay? One facet of it is our 135 database, where we've put in all our 135s into text searchable. So we can look for probables, eliminate false hits, so that when I give an answer to my boss, I can say, this is what we looked at, and this is what we found. Excuse me. It started with the Coalition Provision Authority. In May, I was told that the CPA was going to close, and they had these records, they didn't know what to do with it. So I told my bosses, I said, I can send a team there, scan the documents, bring them back, cost you, with everything, $1.5 million. Well, why? I said, because I spent 8 months of my life looking for 270,000 pages of the JFK assassination. I spent 18 months of my life looking for documents that might help solve the Gulf War illness. It is our responsibility to do that. From 2007 to 2009, we started adding collections. I felt it was critical that we add Mr. Rumsfeld's records to the collection, because this is the first time in maybe 2 generations that we had a Secretary of Defense that presided over not 1 but 2 conflicts. The researcher community and the public as a whole had a right to see that information. And as a result, we've had over 100 congressional inquiries to the Rumsfeld administration, and then we gave them responses to go back through our general counsel, and it literally changed how Congress looked at the Department of Defense, because if they're going to ask a question, they'd be getting an answer. We've also expanded it to events like 9/11, Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Now we have the Executive Archive. It is our model of how we want to move and integrate a records management application. It holds permanent historical records in it, okay? As part of our inspection, they came and looked and gave us an idea of how it will be acceptable to the National Archives to transfer that electronic information. Because the electronic information will become the official record, that frees up 2 FTEs in another division, so they do not have to categorize and put records into boxes to be stored at WNRC. It saves me 90 box storage a year for 30 years because I don't have to store the paper. The Executive Archive is a foundation of what we're going to do next, and our records management application is going to need to do that. Be helpful, excuse me. So we're saving money. It gives us credibility. We're in compliance. And tomorrow, if the Secretary of Defense says, you can put all the documents on there that have to do with grilled cheese, we can look up grilled cheese and find every document in the Executive Archive and move them to an open website. The biggest thing is that as a records manager, I have a reliable product that I can go out and say, yeah, I can find that for you. Or, well, why waste your time reading all that paper? We can scan it in and search for that information. Well, you're going to give it away. Anything can be requested under the FOIA. So as we move forward and the information becomes more and more transparent, or there are things that special categories of records that the Secretary designates as being able to be moved forward, we can easily retrieve the information in a repetitive fashion, okay? One of the things we've just added to the Executive Archive is if you look for the information in 2007 and you came back in 2009, I can tell you what date it was put into the archive, okay? So I could give you an update. Let's see here. That's what it looked like when I came in. That's one of my guys in Iraq between mortar rounds. We're going to electronic, and then everybody's going to be happy. They say you're only as good as your last success, but success isn't final. Failure is not fatal. I have the knife wounds back here, okay? You endure, you make up your mind, you move on, and then you say, okay, let's try something out. What's important is you continue to try, okay? It is the courage to continue that counts. Winston Churchill, okay? Thank you very much for your time. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hopefully you all are not too sleepy. I won't take too long. My name is Vita Sims, and I'm here to discuss our methodology in standing up a new records management program at the Recovery, Accountability, and Transparency Board. We affectionately call ourselves Ratb. Next slide, please. Now, what is the Recovery Board? I'm sure you all have seen our signs everywhere in the airports, on the highway, your recovery dollars at work. Basically, the Recovery Board was created in 2009, February of 2009, by President Obama, and it is the law of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Now, the board within itself, the main goals of the board is to track the money, of course, but also to make sure that the money and the funds are transparent to the American public. The second goal, of course, is to protect as well as ensure that that money is tracked and it is also prevented from fraud, waste, and mismanagement. Next slide. Now here's the fun part. The Recovery Board, or RATB, we're a micro agency. Does anybody know what a micro agency is? Less than 100 employees. We're a micro agency with huge, huge, huge efforts. We're supposed to track all of the recovery stimulus money across the nation, every penny, every cent. and we're supposed to publish this information on the recovery.gov website. Now, my role, I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for the board, but I'm also the Chief Privacy Officer, and lucky me, I'm also the Records Officer. And coming aboard at Ratb in 2009, nothing existed. That meant no policies, no processes, no procedures, no records management program, no information security program, nothing. Basically, when I came aboard, it was a bunch of folks sitting at their desk doing their thing, but no security or anything like that. So my role was trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to go about standing up this records management program? But first and foremost, my role was to stand up the security program. So we have a lack of resources, less than 100 employees. Well, my IA department is actually here. Could you raise your hand? That's my IA department. He's my ISSO. So we're in charge of setting up this program. And of course, there's multiple efforts that are moving forward at the same time. They all have a short timeline. Our sunset date for our agency is actually 2013. So when I came aboard, I believe that was in December of 2009, I was frankly told, okay, Vita, here are your deliverables. I want you to create a security program in 12 months. By the way, we're supposed to have this records management thing. I don't know what it is, but we're supposed to have that stood up 2 years, but we've been working on a policy for a year. Need you to stand that up too. Also, we need you to be the privacy officer, and we need you to make sure you do the privacy stuff, whatever that stuff is. So I smiled because I'm a new employee, and I stated, I can do this. This is great. Until I walked in and realized that nothing existed, and I wasn't really sure exactly what type of data was in the agency. Next slide, please. So that was the main issue for me, was how do I identify the types of data? What are the commonalities between the records management program and the information security program? Well, it's the data. I need to identify exactly what type of data exists in the agency in order for me to move forward with even understanding how to protect the data, let alone how to set up a records management program to classify it, to categorize it into the correct records. So you start with gather the artifacts. Gathering the artifacts can consist of org charts, annual reports, the culture of the agency. For me, because I'm from the security side of the house, I always like to look at the regulations. So of course, NAR regulations, OMB, FIPS 199, NIST 837, and NIST 853, and the scores of others that I have to look at. What's interesting with our agency is, when I asked for the org chart, they kind of looked at me. We're working on that. Well, in order for me to overcome that event, I had to basically understand that the Recovery, Accountability, and Transparency Board, you can say we're sort of divided between two. Not really divided, but let's just put it that way. We have two divisions within our board. So you have the accountability section, and they deal with the fraud, waste, and mismanagement of the recovery funds. You have the transparency side, which of course is recovery.gov. That's what you see when you go to the website and you see where your money is being spent. Once I gathered all of this information, I had to identify my stakeholders. That was pretty easy. It's 75 or less employees. The hard part was just trying to schedule some time to talk with folks. But I started with the internal stakeholders, and of course that's my executive management. I typically run parallel with general counsel. General counsel and security are joined at the hip. I like to think so. Then, of course, our IT operations department, as well as any other organizations. We have the data team, we have a content team that all serve to function for the board. External stakeholders, of course, includes everyone here, the American public, to include regulatory agencies and contractors and vendors. So I have all this information, identify who it is. I try to go about interviewing the stakeholders. Some of the common questions that I would ask them typically are simply, what type of data do you manage? What would happen? What would be the impact if that data was compromised? What data do you consider to be temporary? What data do you consider to be permanent? It's interesting because some of the staff looked at me, one, because I'm the Chief Information Security Officer, so they were hesitant to answer those questions. They thought I was trying to get them from doing something wrong. But it really wasn't the case. One of the biggest issues, I believe, when interviewing the stakeholders is that they didn't really understand what records management was, but they did understand that we needed to protect the information. Although we say we're open and we're transparent, we're like any other federal agency. We have PII data. We have Social Security numbers of our employees. So those records, we don't necessarily want to release that and have that posted on recovery.gov. So after I interviewed the stakeholders, I compared the artifacts, which are the org charts, the annual reports, the regulations, the requirements, against the interviews. Next slide, please. So here's a very, very simplified version of my Excel spreadsheet. Once I gathered all this information, I looked at the agency's department divisions, and I basically labeled it out with finance, communications, mission support, HR. Then I labeled, based on the interviews and based on the research, the types of data. Is it financial? Is it PII? Is it public facing? What's interesting for us is the board, of course, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and we're pushing out with the social media sites extensively. We also have a lot of administrative data and personnel data. The type of schedule of that data. Is it a general schedule, or do we have to create an SF-115 for something that's out of the box that's not within a general record schedule? And then the comment section. For financial data, does it adhere to SAS 70 requirements? The communications, why is this data important? The integrity of the data is of the utmost importance to the board. We want to make sure that the numbers that we put out on the website and what we report, it absolutely cannot change. And then, of course, mission support and any other areas within your agency, types of data. Just understanding and having that laid out so that you can look at it and categorize it is important. And, of course, the system type. GSS is just our overall general support system. We do have another system, which is called the Recovery Operations Center, and they deal with the fraud, mismanagement of funds, and basically that's pretty much any type of open source information that's available to the public. We have analysts on board that actually go out and take that information and track to see where the funds are going to ensure that there's no mismanagement of those funds. Next slide, please. So the overall methodology behind it. In parallel with identifying the stakeholders and identifying and categorizing the data types, remember everything is running in parallel. You have to finish up and develop the records management policy, and you have to identify a records management system. For us, we chose SharePoint 2010. That seemed the most logical. Everyone on board understood it. It didn't cause too much heartburn, and it seems to be working very well right now for us. And then you go into inventorying the records and scheduling the records. Next slide. Now, quick wins for us. Well, I was able to identify the agency data types. That was the most important thing for me. I was able to leverage records management to stand up the IA program. What's interesting about this is as I was doing my research, I wanted to make a comprehensive IA program, so I included records management and privacy, but I had to be careful because there's a learning curve with that. Remember, we're a new agency. So although we have detailed leads that are detailed over to the agency, we also have individuals from the private sector that are appointed within the agency that are not familiar with any federal requirements at all. So it's important that I capture records management requirements up front to also coincide with the information security requirements, kind of getting two things for one. By doing so, I was able to submit the first schedule to NAR within 14 months from start to finish. And we were also able to create repeatable processes that matrix across the organization. And the most important bullet, I think, is the last one, is utilizing the NAR archivist. Lauren, are you here? She's up there. Hi. Yes, utilizing the NAR archivist because I had no prior knowledge of records management. I extensively emailed and reached out to them, and I encourage if any of you are setting up a new records management program to do the same. Next slide. This is a big one. This is an important one. I am very free and open for anybody to contact me in regards to any type of ideas. I'm more than willing to share some of the processes that we have in place. We are a lot different than most federal agencies. Everything was supposed to be done yesterday, and we typically do it the next day, and I'm not exaggerating. We move very, very, very quickly, and we are fortunate enough where we are able to acquire a lot of technology and to get things done. So any type of ideas that you all would like to share, I welcome them, and I will more than likely share those things with you. It's a win-win situation. And I believe that's it. Next slide. Thank you.
All right. So I just hit the. All right. Well, y'all, here I am, the last speaker. I'm going to start off by saying that I don't know about all y'all, but I got into records management in the most illustrious way. I blew out my knee on a file move, and they needed somebody to scan boxes in a warehouse somewhere. And right out of college, that's what I was doing. And within 6 months, I asked enough questions, and I ended up running the place. And that was a long time ago. So when NARA called and said, hey, we want to know if you want to be a presenter, this is it. I've reached the pinnacle of my career. It's amazing, you know? I mean, because honestly, look, I'm excited about records management. You know, I went to my first ARMA conference, and I looked around, and I'm like, okay, but social media came out. And, you know, the challenges that are out there are opportunities. We have the ability to create policy. I'm a political science guy. I got a master's in, you know, in public administration, so I geek about this kind of stuff. And I'm excited about the opportunities that I have that are presented in front of me. They're challenging. We don't have a lot of answers, and the more I travel, the more I find out that a lot of people don't have the answers. And I hope that together we will find these answers. So like I said, so when NARA called, I was excited. This is great. Then I got the agenda, and I'm like, boy, I'm the last person that's going to speak. So I talked to my chief. The first thing he said is, well, you better be funny. So I'm going to try my best to be funny. I hope that I am. I'm going to do all that I can to be funny. I hope that you all take this with a very large grain of salt, because I threw everything I could in there. So we'll start off, first of all, saying that what we're doing is using wikis to reach the warfighter. Our commanding general of TRADOC, which is our training doctrine command, wanted a way to update, to get soldiers' updates on the lines. I'm the social media action officer for the Records Management Division. This means that I had the most friends on Facebook when this project started. So here I am. All right. Got to throw this in here. This is for discussion purposes only. I do not, in one singular body, represent the entire Army. Anything that can be said or needs to be said. Most of these are all the different agencies that actually did most of the processing. Records management, we were just a small portion, because as the process moved, the concerns became more and more about how do we retain these records if they're created, and what we do with those. So this is for discussion purposes only. Please don't take this and say this is the Army's answer to all things that entail wikis, because it is not. Start off with the agenda. We're going to go through the basics, kind of explain a little bit about what it is, go through the concept of what it was that they were trying to accomplish, the option A that came about, which then begat the option B, as they normally do. So the basics. I don't know if it was been said before, but the actual word wiki comes from wiki bus in Hawaii, which means the fast bus. It's the quick little bus that you take around Hawaii. But the creator of wiki named it after that, and used the wiki website. It's an editable website. Anyone has access to it, can change it, make changes, change things around. It's great. I actually came from an IT background where we used it to do computer programming. So you could hop in, boom, 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 you know, change a couple things. Somebody else came on, they added their part, and everything worked great, which is really how I ended up on this. Within the Army, we have what's called the Millwiki. and it's our own internal little wiki site that is housed within our what's called the AKO community, Army Knowledge Online community. I'm sure everybody has their own internal website that they log on where they keep all their information and everybody's got their own little thing. Well, that's AKO. Within that is Millwiki, which is our little wiki where people put all their stuff. I can tell you right now, as of last week, there were 112,242 registered Millwiki users. When we started this, probably about a year ago, just on the training wiki, there are about 32,000 registered users. Same thing with the Millwiki articles, 13,000 articles on there. When we started, it was about 4,000 articles. So it's picking up pace. People are starting to become more aware of it, and it's becoming much more prevalent in the way that people find information. Within that, what the Army wanted to do is we have a publishing ATTP, Army Tactics, Techniques, and Procedures. Now, I have to warn you, I had a year of learning what all these acronyms mean. I hope that you can figure them all out within the 15 minutes that I have to present them to you. I did my best to try to spell them out, but the limitations of PowerPoint are the limitations of PowerPoint. What it is a secure collaborative publishing site. That means that we have the ATTPs are what the Army used to call field manuals. They're still out there. We're trying to convert them over. That's everything from how to deploy a grenade, to clean your M16. For all of you all that were ever in the military, you know that there's a way to do everything, or as we used to say, the right way, the Army way. You know, I'm an old Army guy, and I was in the infantry. So what we're trying to do was the ATTPs are to accelerate the sharing of knowledge compared to the typical timeframes for staffing revisions. When we go to change something in the Army is a very large and massive organization. We have organizations within the Army that are larger than most agencies and have budgets that are larger than most agencies. So these guys can build and do what they want without needing a whole lot of say. They have their own say on things. So what they wanted to do was speed up the process of changing these different ways of getting the information. That's the basics. The concept is the Army launched this test that was going to allow the soldiers and leaders to make real-time update to Army to these ATTPs. We were going to be able to go out on the fields of Afghanistan and decide that this really didn't work that way. What we want to do is there's a better way to do this, and we want to go back into our manuals. We want to update them right now so the next guy that goes in there doesn't make the mistake that we made out there on the field. That was the concept. And the process is under review. The reason why they're trying to create this is because what they call digital natives. The Army is trying to gear itself towards the next generation of soldiers. The next guy, the next soldier out there that doesn't read manuals anymore. He does the Millwikis. He looks on Wikipedia, he checks his Facebook status, he communicates back and forth with his buddies on his cell phone. Through that, we came up with two options. Option A, which is no proponent for anyone that doesn't have military or anything like that, that's the process owner. The Army is pretty much broken down by proponents. Everybody has a responsibility for everything. Personnel is run by the G1 shop, and they're responsible for all the documentation and all the things that are created that deal with personnel. Same thing with G6 is the CIO, the IT folks. This is how it's very simple, very broken down by function. Option B came about, so there would be no one that would look at this. The proponents, you change the doctrine changes right there on the fly. You change policy as it live, as it happens. Option B came out of option A. The changes are held and reviewed by the proponent. As we go through the slides, I'll show you guys how that kind of came about. So this is kind of how option A comes out. Like I said, no proponent adjudication. FMs are converted over to ATTPs. We take the hard copy FMs, we put them into the ATTPs, then they're authenticated and loaded onto this Millwiki. AKO users are able to edit these ATTPs at any time as long as they have access to the web. I will tell you that there are more issues and more legal problems and things that came up about this, but because this is about records management, I want to stay focused on that. And here's the process. We change it. It goes through Army Publishing, does the changes, keeps up with the versions. It goes down here to the Army Electronic Archive, which is our little electronic, kind of our mini ERA. Then eventually we pushed those onto the National Archives ERA. Just to give you all just a little bit of an idea about our ERA and our Army Electronic Archive and the ERA. Currently, it's about 4 terabytes is what our Army Electronic Archive is. So we go into option A. Well, we came up with our first question. What? Does anybody know what happened to Sinbad? They killed Sinbad. On Wikipedia, they killed Sinbad. A couple guys decided that they were going to go on. They were going to change it a couple times, and to the point where the news was reporting that Sinbad was killed. So Sinbad had to come out, and Sinbad had to say, you know, I'm not dead. I'm here. Here I am. So that's Wikipedia. That's the danger that you have with making these things live and allowing people to have access to these things. So, and I guarantee you this will be the only slide you all will ever see with Sinbad on it. So, history right here. Today's record, tomorrow's history. So all kidding aside, that question was taken apart. What if this was doctrine on an M18A1 Claymore anti-personnel mine? And somebody decided to change that. Now, if anyone knows anything about a Claymore mine, you stick it in the ground, you put a wire on it, you run back, and you've got a little clicker. Make sure you don't hook the clicker up before you put the landmine out there. Now, I feel sorry if you all can see this, I don't know. On the front of that mine, it says, front towards enemy. I don't know who the poor soul was that had to make the mistake for them to put that on there. But what if we went into the doctrine and said, where it says front towards enemy, we say front towards enemy is supposed to be towards yourself. And that was the question that we really had. Because a lot of doctrine, a lot of policy, and a lot of other places might change where a document goes or who's this or who's responsible for that. In our case, if somebody changes something, somebody may die. And because of that reason, oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was loud enough. So
we're streaming it, so if you're not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. And so the reason was, so the Army doctrine is a permanent record. Every change to an Army doctrine is permanent. So what does that mean? So the next thing came along where the question, hold on here, now I'm trying to get back caught up, is what does that mean? Well, what if we change a semicolon? What if we change the way that a word is spelled? We've now created a permanent record that now needs to be housed for eternity over the difference of a semicolon. What are the volumes of the changes? What they wanted us to reserve out of our Army Electronic Archives, they wanted us to put on the side 5 terabytes of space for what they considered may be how much storage they're going to need for all the different changes that are going to be on this from these wikis. The next question that we had was, and I can tell you that, like I said earlier, our AEA was only 4 terabytes to begin with. So now you're talking about doubling the size of this thing for a potential change. The next question we had was metadata. Through the process, we said, okay, well, if we're not going to take an entire document and store it every time somebody changes just the most minute things, maybe we can just store the change. Well, when you get to that point, you go, well, what's a change? Is it a substantial change? Well, how do you define a substantial change? Is it a change of an entire sentence? Is it a change of an entire paragraph? Does it change the entire form in its meaning? Okay, well, what does it mean? Well, how do we know? So those are the questions that kind of came out as we went through this entire process. Well, what effect will this have? Like I said earlier, the storage capacity, they're talking about 5 terabytes. Now, I know earlier we talked about 2 terabytes and things were said in other presentations. So, 5 terabytes, that's pretty big for just wikis alone on this. And any additional cost anticipated. Nobody knew what that cost could be. What could it possibly entail? So we thought about some potential solutions. We called our friends from NARA, my good friend Sam Welsh, if he's out there, I don't know, he probably beating traffic back. And, we called in NARA. The NARA representatives suggested that we do a pre-accession of the ATTP records. And this was the preferred method. Some of the issues that we had with this were, once again, we fell into storage data. How much are we going to have? How we can convert this over to the, I believe it's the 7 different standards that NARA will take in their ERA. And another problem is the additional costs with all of that. We didn't know. Wikipedia didn't know. You know, they don't have something that would say how many times somebody would change the doctrine on the Army band. So then we talked about putting into, what if we put it into our Army Electronic Archive? Well, if we put it into our Army Electronic Archive, this would require a development of the process with the Army Publishing Directorate, which is the APD. They have an enterprise content management system. Well, now we've got to figure out how to make these two systems talk. The real challenge that we had behind this was that the TRADOC commander wanted this deployed in July of last year. So we had 4 or 5 months to get this up and running to have some kind of solution because he really wanted this to go. Those were the issues with that solution. So we came up with option B. What option B is the Millwiki sends data, the metadata, and a 260 for what a 260 is the Army Publishing Directorate has a software that converts over all these things into ADA compliant documents so that they come out so you can do them in Braille and all those types of things. And they would send all that to their enterprise content management system and the APD database for authentication. Because what we needed to do was, if we were going to change all these things on the fly and we fall into the Sinbad scenario, that just wasn't going to work. We had to find a way to keep this thing under control. So what we were going to do is we were going to pump everything from Millwiki as a suggestion into the APD. Then it would fall down into the Army Electronic Archive and follow its process. And the PAM 2530, which is what keeps track of all the records. We even have documentation that keeps track of documentation in the Army. And once approved, the information is then distributed appropriately, which it falls down through all of these things, and eventually will fall down to the National Archives. Because what we wanted to do is we didn't want to, I guess we would call it a snapshot. We didn't want to change, we don't have 5,000 copies of something because a period changed back and forth. We were just going to wait and send one copy when we decided that it was well enough. So from there, what's happened since then is we have option B in the current state, because option B was really what we had to go with, because there just was no way that we were going to be able to keep that thing current and live and stay on top of it. The scenarios that popped up were, what if a soldier's walking down with a smartphone and he changes the mandatory 12-mile road march to a 3-mile road march mid-march, and they all have to start, and they all have to stop, and they have to follow the doctrine. So what we did now is the ATTPs are on Millwiki, and they're in a draft format form, but they're not for implementation. It says it all over there. So you can go in, you can change and edit the doctrine as you want, put in your suggestions, put in your information. It's a developmental tool only, and it's still even being currently tested. So, I mean, this thing is, we're considering it very heavily, but there's still a lot of kinks in the legal world that need to be worked out. Suggested changes are reviewed by the proponent or the owner of the process for authentication, and then once it's done in the Millwiki form, they take all of that and they push all of that back down, and it actually goes back into our normal publishing process. So I hope that I stayed within my 15 minutes. I live in Harrisonburg, so I've got a long drive. So that's it. I am done. So.
We have time for a couple of questions. If you'll please stand up, raise your hand so you can get a mic. Tell us who you are, who your question's for, and we'll make this as quick as possible. No pressure. No questions? We have someone over here.
Hi, I'm Dave Lockard from DHS. Question is for Mr. Storr. Your executive archives, does that handle the disposition or the destruction of your records as well?
Yes, it does, because most of the collections that we have put in were permanent in nature, okay? There have been 3 or 4 collections that are of significant interest to the Department of Defense, let's say the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, that isn't permanent. But when we go to transfer to NAR, it's set up into folders so we can tell what is and what isn't. So I know you have deputies, the assistants and stuff, all their records are permanent in nature. Just so you know, the system can handle above TS. I'll be glad to discuss with you exactly what sections of above TS that we can do, but I don't want to say it because it's going to be recorded for posterity. Okay, but yes, we work with NAR to figure out which parts are permanent and which ones are temporary, based upon the office that it came from or the functions that they do to fit a general record schedule.
Any other questions? With that, Lawrence, one more question?
Yeah, I just
Okay.
wanted to ask you, on the EA, what's the total, in like gigabytes or terabytes, whatever, what's the total size of the collection?
Right now, we have about 24 million documents in there, and the slowdown capacity is right at about 25 million, okay? Right now, for a generalized search, it takes about between 1.1 and 1.4 seconds. We go above 25 million, it's going to go to 2 to 4 seconds.
That's unacceptable.
Absolutely, that's what, you know?
And what's the underlying technology there then?
It is a MarkLogic proprietary system that utilizes extended markup language.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
What we can also use this for is we're looking at when the FOIA redacts a document, that we be able to match those documents and take out the same paragraph, sentence, words that are there and add that as a version to the document so that when it gets reviewed 2, 4, 10 years later, we know what it's been done. That's one of the big breaks in our records management system. So,
Last question?
Leslie Cummings, Department of Treasury. Thank you all for coming here, first of all. Really got a lot of good information that I can utilize later on. My question has to do with the implementation of BlackBerries and other small tablets and how that relates to the records management for people who use that media.
don't issue them. Everybody that had a BlackBerry used to be able to text, and I said, okay, you got to keep that information. Now only the more pigs than or equal than other pigs get to do it. So as a result, my quick win is, but we're saving about $14 a year by eliminating the text function, okay? The text is a record when you send it to somebody and you ask them a question, okay? That was my point. So we just eliminated it. Now the tablets, okay, they have some value. Our records our personnel people have a staff meeting where they look at the stack high of stuff every month. And for them to go to a tablet format, okay, and keep everything in the format, in a tablet, what we would do is take that meeting notes and assign a disposition based upon their business needs, okay? Probably would be required coordination with NAR. I don't really think it fits into a general record schedule. We might have something that fits, okay? But as we go forward to records management, we want to, in our DoD records management, what we're trying to do is if you have an administrative document And any of the 18 components, we're going to keep it the same way, and you're going to have one number. We're not going to assign a special number for your section, and that's one of the biggest things we're fighting right now. So, did I answer your question?
Thank you. I think Lawrence has some closing remarks, but I'd like to take this opportunity, since I have the mic, to congratulate my colleagues at NARA who provide us guidance and work hard. The RACO is a big deal. They work hard on it. I think this was a great program. The speakers were wonderful. The content was great. And I just think we need to provide a round of applause for Lawrence and Paul and everybody else. Lawrence?
Thank you very much, Susan. Just a few remarks. I know it's late in the day and everyone wants to rush out of here, and I have to confess that we lied to you on the program. Closing remarks are scheduled from 4 to 4:30, and I guarantee you I will not be standing here at 4:30 talking. All I want to do is, again, thank the panelists, not only for this panel, but for all the panels today. I thought it was a terrific day. You guys did a great job keeping us on schedule. We finished like right to the minute, 4 o'clock. So I really appreciate you guys going out to lunch and coming back and sticking to the program. So give yourselves a round of applause for that. And then, as Susan suggested, I just wanted to make sure that I thanked everybody from the National Archives who worked on the planning, on the program development, on the logistics, and the event day, today's making sure that everybody got where they needed to go, and to the people up in the booth who were doing the AV, to the sound, to our conference planning folks here at Archives One. I think everybody did a great job, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone for the National Archives who contributed to making this day a success, got to thank you, that will be recorded and for posterity and everyone to see. So again, I think another round of applause for all of our staff and for all of you for making this a successful day. So with that, I think we will sign off, not only from here at Archives 1, but at Archives 2, where everyone is holding down the fort. And hope you all have a great rest of the week and an even better Memorial Day weekend. Thank you all for coming, and hope you enjoy the conference.